Hi guys, welcome to my channel. First time viewers, always welcome. I'll be discussing some of the issues with the Glock in a series of videos to make it easy to digest everything and offer possible ways for you to improve your Glock experience. And so in this video, I'll be discussing brass to the face. What causes brass to the face? Well, brass to the face showed up much later in the Glock generations, like right around, let's see, I think it was like around the third generation, they started to get brass to the face. And, you know, they had all these companies scrambling to fix the undesirable issue of eating your expended shells because they'd fall in your safety glasses between your glasses and your cheeks and burn you. They'd go down your shirt. They'd hit you in the forehead and do all kinds of terrible things to you. And people didn't like to shoot the third gen, Glock 17s and 19s because of the brass to the face. I don't know much about if it happened to the 40 caliber ones or the 45 calibers, but a lot of the 9mm shooters complained about it. So Glock took a different direction, it seemed, from the second generation pistols, and they started moving away from stainless parts. So things like your safety plunger, your striker, your ejector, then became, and your trigger bar, all became a cladded metal part versus the stainless that they used to be. And their trigger bars actually improved the reliability of the spring the way that they redesigned the spring attachment, but they're cladded. So I'm guessing it's a nickel on some kind of base metal, but they're not stainless. You got to keep that in mind if you clean your gun, because you don't want to use Hoppy's number 7, maybe it's 9. It's the one that smells like kerosene, but it'll lift the cladding off the parts, and it could result in your safety plunger sticking when the cladding starts to peel off. It's not really a good idea. So if you want to continue to use that product, you're going to have to change your parts out, the stainless parts, because you're going to have some problems with the cladding shearing off and flaking and getting in the action. But yeah, so the third gen started to have this brass to the face issue. It wasn't there before, and a lot of the Glock fans were like, what gives? So a lot of companies out there hustled to come out with better extractors, thinking that that's the problem, that's the reason why now all of a sudden you're eating your brass, because in the third gen they beveled the ejection port and they added a round indicator on the extractor. So with this visual difference, people associated the brass to the face with that. And has nothing to do with brass to the face. This is kind of a good idea. I like it. Tells you when there's a load in the chamber, because this little guy sticks out. And is beveled, so in theory it just makes reliable ejection, although I never really reliable ejection. I really never saw a problem with the second gens on that. The second gens and the first gens, they weren't beveled like that. Let me show you what I'm talking about. They were square like this. They had a squared area here, and it wasn't relieved. And there's no round indicator on the side, so you have to always, and like always, the gun is always loaded. But on the other more modern design, even if the gun is supposedly always loaded, you could tell with this little tab, because when you chamber around, this thing's going to stick up. And then if you run your finger across it, you can feel it. But you shouldn't rely on that, because technically all guns are loaded for our own safety. So they were all trying to come up with a better, extractor, and that wasn't the issue. That wasn't causing the brass to the face. It got to be such a concern that they redesigned the ejector. They used to be kind of pointy. They'd come to a point, and they thought maybe having a more squared surface here would stop the brass to the face. And it didn't. It continued. And some guns had it worse than others. And some people had miracle guns where it didn't happen. And they were the lucky ones, because when they had transitioned over from using stainless parts and going with cladded metal, like this guy here, the redesigning of the ejector was a huge improvement, because it reduced an awful lot of the top part of the ejector biting into the slide. Like on the older ones, you would see like wear patterns from the top of the ejector hitting the slide as it would zoom past. So the ejector on a Glock also aids in the feed. It holds the round down when a magazine goes in, and assists in the feeding off the magazine onto the feed ramp. So they redesigned this ejector thinking that it would solve the brass to the face issue. And it's also safer because it's not pointed. If it were to be pointed like it used to be, like in the first, second, and early third gens, what can happen is when you clear the chamber and you have a very long round in the chamber, the ejector could set the primer off on the round and blow your gun up. And that's the problem with extended ejectors, is they can blow your gun up. You think that they wouldn't make them extended, but they do, and they still continue to design them that way for reasons I have no idea. I mean, unless they want the empty to clear the ejection port to prevent a stovepipe, but that could be the only reason. But having extended ejectors just opens a world of problems, and setting a round off when you clear it is one of the biggest issues. So this is a safer ejector. The 30-27-4. It's so safe that I actually replaced it out on my second gen frame. So I've got the same ejector on my chopped down 17. This is before I actually got a 19. The cycle rate on this one's much longer, and I like it because I think they're more reliable, but Time will tell. But I started to get brass to the face when I changed out the pointy ejector here. And I changed it out because I didn't want to have a possibility of a round going off when I'm clearing. So this made sense. I had to change this out. I hope you do too. But, you know, some people, they don't see a reason until they have a problem, and then they'll handle it then. But I can foresee that problem, and I don't want nothing to do with it. So I put that guy on my second gen. So they tried different things to stop the brass to the face, you know, because everybody seemed to like Glock so much, and that was like their biggest disappointment is eating their brass. So they redesigned a recoil spring assembly, like this really complicated one, to tune the ejection recoil pulse so that it would be favorable to the ejection and compact and subcompact pistols. Having a variable recoil spring, variable load recoil spring, actually does help with the ejection. You know, it stops the empties from flying across the room, and it also helps the slide not batter the frames too badly. You know, so depending on where the slide is in its travel on that recoil spring, it has a variable load. So it might be weak at some point of its travel, and it might increase, you know, going back, or it might get close to the frame and then intensify to prevent the slide slap. But there's a lot of good reasons to have variable load recoil springs, and it's just complicated because on full size you typically run one spring, and if the spring doesn't do the job, you increase the the load. So if 17 pounds isn't enough for you, you just go to 18 and you get more reliability. And but on a variable recoil spring such as this one, you don't have the options to change out springs because a lot of times it's self-contained, like this captured unit. So you just replace the entire unit. So your ability to go up in spring, strength is not as easy. I don't even know if it's available. But if you were going to modify your Glock to shoot a high pressure load, you're at a huge disadvantage because, unless they make springs for this particular captured unit, you can't mess with it because you'll end up with some pretty severe frame damage, and you might end up, pelting somebody with your brass in such a way it causes an injury because it's launching them out. But so moving towards fixing that brass to the face, that was one of the solutions that seems like they came up with. But in reality, they didn't have to go that far. They didn't have to have a variable load recoil spring, and they didn't have to change out the ejector, making it a little bit flatter. But this, like I was saying, is a massive safety issue, and you should change it out if you got a first, second, or third gen that's pointed. But what causes the brass to the face is if you look at this, and you really look at it, this is a stamped sheet metal part. And that little gray area you're seeing there is an irregular surface. It's kind of like where the press chomped that sheet metal to form the part. But as we can see, it's gray all the way around this. So we're getting total contact on the expended shell. So we can be sure we're getting constant ejection, same place every time. So this gun, when you shoot it, you're not going to get brass to the face because the impact surface of the ejector is constant. It's not rigid. And that's what causes brass to the face. And that's it. You know, it's that simple. It's the ejector face that causes brass to the face. It's not the extractor, and it's not the recoil spring assembly. You know, because the last thing you want to do is eat a lot of empty hot brass, you know, because your slide's just like slamming them back and chipping up your frame. So they came up with this variable load recoil spring, and also you don't want the thing to blow up when you're clearing out the chamber, so they made it more squared. And but what stops the brass to the face is the impact surface of the ejector. That's it. Doesn't matter what gun you have. If this thing's like a stamped sheet metal part and irregular on its impact surface, you're going to get brass to the face. And on mine, because I did get brass to the face, even changing out that part, if you watch the light dance across it, it goes back. It's a constant surface. I had smoothed it out, and I had filed it in a way that it works with the ejection port. You know, so when you're looking at this guy, come on, camera. Here we go. You can tell it's slightly rounded, kind of like in a radial use where it deflects the empties out of the chamber, and it no longer has brass to the face. So there you have it. Your brass to the face is the front face of your ejector. You just have to get it in the right contour, and then you have to make it constant, and it'll go away. And if you think you can just buy a part to fix that problem, you might get lucky. But you're going to have to buy an awful lot of these and figure out which one works the best, because they're all stamped sheet metal parts. That's an adjustment you're going to have to make with an abrasive file, or maybe a stone, if you don't want brass to the face. But that's what causes it. So don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more content. And cheers, I'll see you later.